Would you pray silence and be upstanding to receive the Worshipful Mayor of the Borough of Eastbourne, Councillor Steve Wallace?
Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. How lovely to see you all. Human beings at last. Good evening and welcome, everyone, to the Eastbourne Borough Council Annual Council Meeting. I am the Mayor, Councillor Steve Wallace. This meeting is being broadcast live, and for those watching on a live stream, please bear with us if we have any technical difficulties. All councils have been sent the agenda papers for this meeting. Straight on to agenda item number 1, the election of a new mayor. I invite nominations for election of a new mayor. Councillor Maxted.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, distinguished guests, past mayors, aldermen, councillors, and those who are watching this on YouTube.
Councillor Maxted, sorry, can I just hear you're nominating Councillor Rotherham, yeah?
Oh, yes, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Do you have a seconder?
Oh, yes, sorry, I do. Yeah.
Seconder, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. Councillor Maxted, now is your moment.
Shall I continue?
Yes,
Thank you,
please.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
thanks. So I was in such a rush there, sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's been very anxious and stuff. But anyway, but how lovely it is to be here in person. So, and it's good to see everybody. It's my absolute privilege and pleasure to propose the nomination of Councillor Pat Rotherham for Mayor of Eastbourne. A lot of you have known Pat for some years. A few of you have known Pat forever. I've known Pat for just 5 or so years, so I asked him if he could let me know a little about his life and how he came to be where he is now. Well, I don't know where he is now, but he's somewhere, isn't he? Yeah. Right, Pat tells me he had an idyllic childhood in the northwest of Southern Ireland. His headmaster father also had a small farm with a fishing river flowing alongside it. Pat was educated at leading residential colleges in Ireland, and in 1961 he came to London, where he worked in marketing and advertising and later as an executive officer for the Australian government in London. It was also in London that Pat met Barbara, who I know is here, and he tells me a little story about how this came to be. They first met at the Castle Ballroom in Richmond. On their first date, they arranged to meet at Putney High Street to go to the cinema. They stood on opposite sides of the wide road, not recognising each other. Pat says he had some excuse, as Barbara had changed her hair colouring to black and was wearing a long-length black coat. So he eventually crossed the road because he says he fancied the young woman in black whose date had obviously not turned up, only to discover when he crossed the road that it was Barbara. And this Patism obviously didn't deter Barbara, and the two got married. They're still together as a formidable team, and in Pat's own words, Barbara has been the bedrock of everything he's done and achieved in life. So how did Pat come to be in Eastbourne? Well, in the late 60s, the family would spend long weekends with Barbara's parents in Broadoak near Heathfield, and Eastbourne became their go-to place. They loved the seafront, its architecture, and walking on the downs. Later on, they decided that Eastbourne provided a better environment for their family of 2 young boys. They developed their large house in Fulham into flats, and this gave them the funding to move and enter the hotel business in Eastbourne in 1972. Pat joined the Liberals around the time of the second general election of 1974 and has since served the community as borough councillor, district councillor, county councillor, and was also deputy mayor in 1984. Even when not an elected representative, Pat has always worked hard for the benefit of his neighbourhood, his town and its people. As Borough Councillor for Upperton, Pat has always been there to support residents. He's highly visible and well known and is held in high regard by all who know him. Pat's focus of attention has been to ensure Upperton remains a safe, healthy and pleasant area in which to live. He helped secure permanent protection for Upperton's lovely parks and gardens under the Queen Elizabeth Fields in Trust scheme for the enjoyment of future generations. He has initiated and supported facilities for young people, such as the skate park in Manor Gardens and the play area in Hartfield Square. Recently, Pat was instrumental in the restoration of the Hermitage in Manor Gardens, and his dogged determination finally paid off after 10 years of lobbying to get the crossing upgraded to a pelican crossing opposite St Thomas of Becket School, plus the installation of a new crossing for pupils at the new Gildridge House School. Nothing will get in Pat's way and stop him from putting others first and getting on with the job he's been elected to do. Whilst battling for the residents of Upperton these past few years, Pat also battled with serious illness and a treatment that would have, quite understandably, knocked anyone else off their feet. But no, not Pat. He kept going, and here he is today, I think, somewhere, yeah, strong, fit and determined as ever. This is a much-deserved honour that I know Pat will accept and conduct with his trademark humility. He will fully dedicate himself to the responsibilities of this office in the same way he has committed his political life to the needs, concerns and support of others. And it's my absolute pleasure to propose this motion and commend it to all members of the Council for your support. Thank you. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maxted. Councillor Shuttleworth.
Feels a bit like mastermind. Mr Mayor, and distinguished guests, past mayors, councillors, visitors, and all those unable to be present in person today but are able to watch the proceedings. Tonight is indeed a very special occasion for all of us, but particularly for Pat and Barbara. And I'm absolutely delighted to be given the privilege of seconding this nomination. Pat has been a friend for many, many years. Pat and Barbara have been friends, and it gives me great pleasure to be able to do this seconding for someone who has adopted the town of Eastbourne, which has now been his home for almost 50 years, and where, with Barbara at his side, he's brought up his sons, run a successful local business, and played an absolutely full part in the community that is Eastbourne throughout those 50 years. I first met Pat a bit sooner than you, Robin. I met Pat back in 1974, when some of us were young Liberals, and when David had long black hair, I seem to remember. And it was the year of 2 general elections, so if you think you've had a few problems recently, just imagine what that was like. But Pat has always been an activist and an organiser with a passion for striving for fairness and justice, as well as for environmental improvements across the town, and fighting to preserve those things which we all hold dear, those buildings and open spaces that we all strive to look after. Pat has also been an incredibly active and enthusiastic person in other ways. He's a lifelong lover of sport, and in London he was founder secretary of the Gaelic Football Youth Board, and he initiated annual games between Dublin and London youth teams that were played at Wembley as part of the Gaelic Games Festival. And this interest in sport extended particularly to swimming and athletics, and Pat remains incredibly energetic, but he did say that he probably wouldn't be entering the Beachy Head Marathon just this year because it's such a busy mayoral year for him. Mind you, back in the 1980s, Pat was very proud to join the then, well, not the then, I suppose that was probably me, but to join the council leader, David Tutt, and myself in the annual 10-mile fun run around the town, which many of you will remember, I'm sure. And Pat was always incredibly determined to put in a really good time, as well, of course, as supporting local charities. Pat has been an executive member of the Eastbourne Hotels Association and chair of the Federation of Small Businesses in Eastbourne. He's also followed his passion for the preservation of the best of Eastbourne as a chair of the Conservation Committee. But he's always been one of the most progressive thinkers on this council and other councils. He's a very forward thinker, and when Pat puts forward his views, people listen very carefully. As a county councillor for Upton Ward, he's fought doggedly for improvements for local roads and pavements and achieved many other improvements for the area he represents so proudly. I know how much Pat is looking forward to serving his adopted town as mayor, but Pat is only one half of a very impressive team. And I know that Pat has always been so proud of the way his charming wife, Barbara, has worked alongside him. Barbara's friendly, welcoming approach, along with her great talents for organising events, brings real strength to the mayoralty, as they both totally recognise the enormous work of the so many local organisations and businesses that the mayor and mayoress will be visiting and encouraging through their time in the town in these roles. Pat's years of serving the community and love of the town will make him a great ambassador for Eastbourne. And in these challenging times for so many individuals and families, he will bring understanding, encouragement, and a real sense of purpose in supporting those many groups and individuals who are working so hard to help people in our community at this time. Pat is looking forward to supporting his chosen charities, Amaze, who support children with learning difficulties, Community Wise, and Holding Spaces, who help individuals and families with mental health issues. I know that Pat and Barbara will do themselves proud, but also will do this council and our town proud in their time as mayor and mayoress. I am truly delighted to second this motion and commend it to all of you for your support. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shuttleworth. Would any other member wish to comment? I see no hands. Then I put the nomination of Councillor Pat Rodderhan to the vote to be our next Mayor of Eastbourne. Those in favour, please raise your hands. That is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Please be standing as we welcome the new Mayor of Eastbourne. Please be seated.
I was a frequent visitor to Eastbourne in the late 60s and fell in love with it. My family and I moved here at the end of 1971, and I'm honoured and proud to be chosen Mayor of Eastbourne for the next year. I still love the many architectural features around the town, walking along our beautiful seafront and up in the Downs, which is now part of the South Downs National Park, and visiting the stunning countryside that surrounds us. Eastbourne has so much to offer its residents and visitors. And now we have the Devonshire Quarter open at the right time to help and promote and support the expansion of our main industries, tourism and conferencing. During COVID, the town has been hit very hard, but with the lockdown beginning to ease, our future is bright. Let's show the country that Eastbourne is the place to be. Prosperity comes with effort, in fact, lots of it. But we can and will turn our beautiful town into the bustling hub of East Sussex. Let's all work together to support our local shops and businesses and show our young adults that Eastbourne is the place to live, work and enjoy, and to become part of this prosperity. During the week, I had a few musings, and I would like to share one with you. When Barbara and I were deputy mayor and mayoress in the late 1980s, we owned a hotel, and sometimes we would dash from our hotel to our home nearby, quickly change, and off to an engagement. Our two sons, young then, but here somewhere with their families, coined a phrase, "Mum and Dad are off playing God again." I assure you that this is not how we see our role for the coming year. We will serve this council and the residents of Eastbourne. Our role will be welcoming, learning, thanking, supporting, promoting, and acknowledging the individuals, volunteers, organisations, and businesses that make Eastbourne the great town that it is. Eastbourne has always been a town of giving and volunteering. And today, we would like to say a sincere thank you to the many, many residents, organisations, and charities and businesses who supported fellow residents during the COVID epidemic. I've chosen 3 small charities close to my heart in what to do, and because they are small, it is difficult for them to grow and support the many who need them. Amaze is a small charity providing children and young adults between 14 and 24 years who have educational needs and disabilities, and their families, with information, advice and support. Amaze was set up in Brighton in 1997 by a group of parent carers who came together to support parents who could not find the help they needed. The project opened in Eastbourne in 2018, and they have helped 76 young people and their families. Support varies from attending groups and walks to a variety of workshops, including building some self-confidence and gaining some of the skills they need to find work. They also help young people and their carers through the maze of regulations, like helping complete applications for financial support and allowances they often desperately need. Currently, Amaze support 39 young people in Eastbourne They had 9 new referrals since February 2021, and they have nearly 20 on the waiting list. The services are highly valued and they need our support. Second is Community Wise. They are based in the Old Town part of Upperton Ward. What is now Community Wise opened in 1964 as a YMCA youth centre with financial support from Eastbourne Council. When responsibility for education transferred from Eastbourne to East Essex County Council in 1975, external funding ceased, and the idea of a community centre for the benefit of the community was born. In 2000, when the YMCA no longer needed use of the building, the local stakeholders formed a new charitable trust, arranged a mortgage to buy their own building. Over the years, many volunteer hours and talents has transformed Community Wise into a light, warm, well-equipped, welcoming community centre, providing, through local volunteers, community activities of many different kinds. Lockdowns have completely closed the centre for 9 of the last 12 months, and their reserves are seriously depleted. Residents of Upperton and Old Town need the community centre fully functioning again. Holding space. Councillor Josh Baravenda recommended that I should consider holding space as one of the Mayor's charities. Later, I recalled that a small sum of money from the Upperton devolved budget had helped Hamza Raja Jones set up holding space in September 2019. The primary ethos is to support parents and carers who are caring for a child struggling with mental health. Holding space has good relationships and direct pathways with schools, local charity and statutory organisations. They are now a registered charity with a great team of volunteers, including carers, qualified therapists, practitioners and a board of trustees. They are now looking for their own premises, which will offer them office space, therapy rooms, as well as a safe space for families to come together for coffee, art, drama, and other support structures. Please support the Mayor's charities during the year. Good evening and welcome everyone to the Eastbourne Borough Council annual council meeting. That's the wrong page. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Got it. I'd like to thank the outgoing Mayor. Steve, you were a very eloquent, engaging, and a super fit Mayor, as you showed us during the European Car Free Day last September, when you walked from each event to the next event around Eastbourne. You set us all a very good example by walking around Eastbourne. Sadly, the COVID lockdown deprived many individuals and organisations from enjoying your talents. Thank you for what you're able to do. Can I also give a vote of thanks to the outgoing Deputy Mayor and Consort for everything they have done in the last year. Can I pass over to the Head of Democratic Services to announce any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before we get on to apologies for absence, Councillor Wallace, you're entitled to make a short speech in response.
Well, make a speech. I can't guarantee it's going to be short. Great. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Pat, on becoming Mayor of Eastbourne. You are going to make a fantastic mayor for this great town of ours, so many congratulations. I just want to say a few thanks. Thank you to my consorts, my wonderful sister here, Deborah, who's been looking after me now for nearly 58 years, and it probably won't change. To my other consort, Richard Chappell, who's my partner, who's not here this evening, but then he wasn't here for when I was being made mayor, so nothing really changes there. To my mother, also known as Councillor Bannister, who often stood in at the last moment when my two consorts were not available. So thank you, Margaret, for your support. I also want to thank Robert, who's not only a fantastic driver, he's very good for reminding me of where I'm supposed to be and what I'm supposed to be saying and whether I'm making a speech or not. And that's often on the way to our venue. So thank you, Robert, for your support. And thank you, Nicola, for all your support as well over the last 2 years. Thank you to Sammy, Councillor Chowdhury, for your support as Deputy Mayor. You were a splendid deputy, and thank you for standing in for me on so many events. I want to thank my fundraising committee. It's such a shame that we didn't manage to have the big ticket event we had hoped to have in March 2 years ago, not last year. 2 years ago? Oh, last year. 2020, that's it. Because of you know what. But we still managed to raise £15,500 for that charity without the big ticket event. So I'm really pleased with that, and there will be a cheque presentation towards the end of the month. I want to thank all the residents of Eastbourne for all the support, and I've met so many of them either in person or online, as it turns out to be the new norm these days. So thank you to the residents of Eastbourne for the support. And obviously, Eastbourne Borough Council officers, Peter Finnis, who I'm delighted is here tonight, Simon Russell, Sarah Lawrence, Oliver Dixon, and Rob Cottrell. You've all been a great support to me, as well as many others. So thank you very much for supporting me. Finally, I want to thank all of you, all the elected members, for coming to my events, showing me support, and it's been great working with you in various different events over the last 2 years. Thank you very much for your support. I shall thoroughly miss being the Mayor of Eastbourne, so thank you very much, everybody.
So, Mr. Mayor, we're on to item 2, the apologies for absence, and just to confirm to those present that I've had apologies from Councillor Whippy. So,
Item 3, can I ask if any members wish to declare any interests? Nope. Councillors, do you wish me to sign the minutes of the last meeting on the 24th of February 2021 as a correct record?
Agreed.
Agreed. Nothing to sign, no. The minutes have been approved. Can I invite nominations from councillors for appointment of Deputy Mayor? And can I invite Councillor Tutt to propose and Councillor Barbarinda to second the nomination of Councillor Helen Burton?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and can I add my congratulations to it? I know you've already received congratulations to others on your election as Mayor of Eastbourne. I'm one of the few, and I know there are a few others around the room, but one of the few that were a councillor back in 1984 when you and Barbara served as Deputy Mayor and Mayoress. It's taken a little while to promote you. I'm sorry about that. But it's great to see you there now. And I know from the experience of seeing how well you served Eastbourne back in 1984 in the deputy role, just how well you will perform as Mayor and Mayoress of Eastbourne. And I wish you every success in that capacity. I would like to formally, to start with at least, propose that Councillor Helen Burton be appointed as Deputy Mayor for the ensuing municipal year, and I know that Councillor Babarindi will be happy to second that.
Can I invite you to say...
You just need Councillor Babarind to formally second it on microphone, so you just invite him to the microphone.
Councillor Babarinde, can I invite you to second the motion? Couldn't see you.
Yes, you may, Your Worshipful, and it is a pleasure to be the first person to address you in such a way, Your Worshipful. Mr. Mayor, past mayors, aldermen, councillors and distinguished guests, wonderful residents of Eastbourne. I'm being whispered at.
So just need you to formally second at this stage. You'll have your speech in a second.
Yes, I will formally second.
You formally seconded, so now, David, it's your opportunity to make your speech.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Madam Mayoress, Honorary Freedman, Honorary Alderman, past mayors, councillors, a distinguished guest, and indeed everybody who's watching the proceedings this evening. It's really good to be back meeting in person. It's been too long. And whilst the surroundings are not quite what we're used to, it's good to be here in the Welcome Building and the opportunity to demonstrate just how versatile this building is. I know that the thoughts of all councillors will be with those who have lost loved ones or suffered during COVID. It feels as if we might be coming through it now. The vaccination programme has been going well. Other than this last few days, we went for an entire week with 0 infections in Eastbourne, and long may that continue. It's been a tough time for everybody, but as I say, it's really good to be back. Can I add my thanks, Mr. Mayor, to those of yourself, to our past mayor and deputy mayor and their consults for the work that they've done, not only over the last 12 months, but over the past 24 months. The first 12 months of that were pretty normal, and we got out and we did lots, and they raised lots of money and attended a lot of events. The past 12 months have been abnormal, shall we say, but the work they've done has been really sterling on behalf of the town, and I know that everybody would offer them their sincere thanks for that that's taken place. Moving to why I'm really on my feet, and that's to propose Councillor Helen Burton, my colleague in St Anthony's ward, as Deputy Mayor. I wasn't intended to do this. It was supposed to be Councillor Whippy. Councillor Whippy, though, has had to be tested, had to go through a COVID test, and she's waiting for her PCR results. And so she's quite sensibly and understandably had to send her apologies today. So I'm afraid you get the substitute. And because you get the substitute, I've no notes, I've no witticisms, you've just got me, I'm afraid. So I will do my very best. I met Helen quite some while ago now. And why am I proposing her as Deputy Mayor? I'm proposing her as Deputy Mayor because Helen is somebody who is really involved and wrapped up in the community of Eastbourne. And that's what the mayoralty, as you know only too well, Mr. Mayor, is all about. Helen stood for council 2 years ago in St Anthony's ward and now represents the area where she was brought up as a child. She lived at that time in Langley Village, and that's, of course, part of St Anthony's. I met her when I attended an engagement of what was then known, as I knew it, as Eastbourne Volunteers, is now the Volunteers Network. And Helen was just a key player in that organisation. She's someone who actually rolls her sleeves up, gets involved, She's got tremendous organisational skills, which is good for me because it keeps me in order. It doesn't stop there. A lot of people who are good planners and good organisers just like telling other people what they should do and how to do it. That's not Helen. Helen actually does herself. She's been, in the past, a foster carer. As I said, she was instrumental in the setting up and the running of the Volunteers Network. When East Sussex County Council decided that they were going to close a number of libraries across the county, that wasn't good for Helen. She wanted to make a difference. And so she brought together a group of volunteers, and that group of volunteers now run the Pevensey Community Library. So real action there. And then, of course, we come into COVID. And in COVID, things got really difficult for everybody. And a large number of our vulnerable members of our community found themselves isolated, not just isolated because they were isolating in their own homes, but because they didn't have contact with other people. So Helen, at that time, set up the befriending group to give those individuals, to make contact with those individuals and give them somebody that they could contact and speak to on the phone on a regular basis if they wished to. So again, really getting involved in things. And another difference that she made was with Langley Larder. Again, many members of our community have suffered financially during the past 12 or more months. They found it difficult to feed themselves and their families. And so through Helen's actions at Langley Community Centre, the Langley Larder gives those people an opportunity to get food at a very, very low cost and at the same time stop that food that might otherwise be thrown away from supermarkets. All very good food, all still in date, but it makes sure that that food is not wasted. So a true contributor to the community, someone that you know, whatever the issue that comes along, Helen's going to be in there. Helen's going to be organising and making a difference. Not so long ago, in an area where there was a lot of rubbish left, and she was being told, oh, you know, there's nothing can be done about that. She said, well, of course there is. And so she organised a litter pick, and she got myself and others to don mask and other protective gear and get out there with the litter picks and actually collect that rubbish. So someone I know is already ingrained in the community, someone who I know will be a tremendous ambassador for this council and this town over the next 12 months. Her environmental credentials are excellent. She served for the last 2 years as a member of the South Downs National Park Authority, and one of the great aims of this council is to ensure that those downs are open to all who want to enjoy them, but at the same time protected. And I know that she will continue, although not in the role of the South Downs National Park, given her new responsibilities today, but I know that she will continue to do her bit to ensure that our environment is protected. I have absolutely no hesitation, Mr Mayor, in proposing Councillor Helen Burton as the Deputy Mayor of Eastbourne for the ensuing municipal year, and I invite every councillor to support that nomination.
Can I invite Councillor Baberinda to second?
Take two. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, past mayors, aldermen, councillors, distinguished guests and wonderful residents of Eastbourne who might be in this room or watching at home, good evening. It's an honour to use my maiden speech as an Eastbourne Borough Councillor to second the nomination of Councillor Helen Burton as our town's Deputy Mayor for the coming year. Helen lives and breathes community, and this is exactly what we need in the Deputy Mayor of Eastbourne. Our town, after all, epitomises what community is all about. And whether it's through Eastbourne volunteers, connecting motivated and talented residents with community groups to help them take their work to new heights, or whether it's through Eastbourne Voice, the community newspaper, getting out essential information across our town, whether it's the befriending service that David mentioned, providing conversational lifelines to isolated elderly Eastbournians during the first lockdown and beyond, or whether it's through the Langley Larder, tackling food poverty and food waste at the same time, Helen has proven that she will leave no stone unturned in doing what she can to serve our town. Now, if this is her record in her day job, imagine what she could achieve for our voluntary sector and for our town more widely as our Deputy Mayor. In Helen, who is embedded in Eastbourne's voluntary sector, we'll have a Deputy Mayor who will take the needs, interests, priorities and aspirations of charities, social enterprises and community groups to the heart of the Mayor's parlour. And I look forward to working with her and Mr Mayor and many others on the Mayor's fundraising committee in pursuit of that goal. Now, Helen has spoken about how she was isolated some time ago in a number of blogs. Her personal journey is something that she's expanded on a number of times, and it's an inspiration. Only a matter of years ago, Helen was a single mum who felt hugely isolated, and this resonates with me because growing up myself with a single mum, during some difficult patches in our lives, she experienced some very isolated times too. And so I see and somewhat feel some of those barriers as a result. But today I see and feel Helen smashing right through them as a social enterprise CEO, a local councillor, pillar of the community, and incoming Deputy Mayor. Isolated Eastbournians, of whom coronavirus has created many more, are going to be looking at our Deputy Mayor inspired by what she has done and inspired by how she has turned it around. And this is another reason why Councillor Helen Burton is the Deputy Mayor that our town and our times need right now. Now, although I spoke about smashing through barriers and boundaries, there are some barriers and boundaries that she must be careful not to cross as Deputy Mayor. And I draw on my experience as a mayoral consort about a decade ago. And I draw on it because I needed to remind a former mayor about those barriers and boundaries. Now, back in 2011, when I was about 18 years old, I was on a visit with her as her consort, and it was our first visit that we did together. It was to meet some army reservists. And on arrival, rather than introducing me as her consort, the mayor said, "Hello, this is Josh, and he's my escort today." Madam Mayor took on a whole new meaning. So barriers and boundaries, please, Councillor Burton, as Deputy Mayor. But on to bridges, not boundaries though. Helen and I have a bunch of shared connections. We both founded social enterprises, which were the route for both of us into politics. We're both committed to tackling poverty, whether Helen through the Langley Larder or me through my social enterprise. We were both, if we're keeping on the subject of law and order, my social enterprise was around just that. We were both deeply disappointed by the Line of Duty finale too, another commonality between us. But an extra one is that we both share a predecessor, former councillor for St Anthony's Ward and latterly Hampden Park, Dean Sabry, who I'd like to take a small opportunity to pay tribute to today. Now, Dean and I were in the same class together at Stafford School for many years. He was always smarter than me, did better than me. And latterly, we were at Sussex Downs College together for a couple of years as well. And I was digging through my messages. And 10 years ago, almost to the week, on the 3rd of May 2011, I sent Dean this message when I was campaigning for Stephen Lloyd in the general election. Or I think it was the local elections, actually. "Hi, Dean. Hope you're well. Just remembered, you said that you were going to study politics at uni next year, which is pretty cool. I wondered if you'd be up for helping out at an election on Thursday." And we all know what happened next. And I'm sure every councillor here has a tale of their own. about their respective path to this place. Now, Dean made a huge contribution to public life in Eastbourne, serving in cabinet with distinction, bringing barnstorming debate with wit to council meetings, and successfully powering the parliamentary office of our former MP, Stephen Lloyd, another outstanding servant of our town. Now, I hope that I can honour Dean's Hampden Park legacy with similar distinction, just as Helen Burton has done in St Anthony's Ward. Helen, you will make an outstanding Deputy Mayor for our town, which is why I'm delighted to second your nomination to be Eastbourne's second citizen. And I wish you and your consorts well.
Can I ask if anyone else would like to speak? In which case, I will put the nomination to the council. There will be a straight vote. All in favour? Thank you. Okay. Obviously carried. And can I invite Deputy Mayor Councillor Burton to the platform?
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I passed the first test. I made it onto the stage without falling over. Thank you for the honour that you've bestowed on me this evening and for the trust that you've placed in me. I'm very much looking forward to supporting our new mayor in his work over the next year and helping to fundraise for his chosen charities. There are hundreds of amazing organisations in Eastbourne doing vital work in our town and a lot of businesses that need us to champion them. So I'm really honoured to be able to do that in my new role as Deputy Mayor. I'm also very honoured that I will be assisted in my duties by my chosen consort, Daphne Burton, my mum. I've been very lucky to have been given a wonderful start in life thanks to my parents, and they have been a constant support to me over the years through some very challenging times. They've also taught me to care for others as they have cared for me. I absolutely would not be here in this position this evening without their support. Many people in our town don't have that kind of family support and encouragement and may be fighting their own battles with their health, with poverty, with a myriad of different issues. Thankfully, in Eastbourne, we have many organisations that will help to provide that support so that nobody is left alone with their problems. A few years ago, I could never have imagined that I would be sitting here tonight talking to you now. As a single foster parent, I had become isolated from the wider community, and I'd lost confidence in myself. When my youngest daughter started school full-time, I made a conscious decision to reach out, to get involved in community work and try to make a difference. It was the best decision I ever made. An unexpected consequence of my voluntary work is that my own life was transformed. Many volunteers find that in helping others, you are also helped yourself, and this was certainly true for me. Over the years, many people have encouraged me and supported me and my family. Organisations like Embrace and Holding Space literally held my young family together through the most traumatic of times. Wayfinder Women supported me personally and helped to build my confidence from someone who could never have spoken publicly to someone who is able to speak to you now as Deputy Mayor of Eastbourne. I suffer from invisible illnesses that can sometimes feel overwhelming, but there are organisations in Eastbourne to help with that too. Many community organisations have made a positive contribution to my life and to the lives of people I care about. I'm really looking forward to supporting them. As someone who has been working in the community for many years, long before I became a councillor, I know how many volunteer-reliant organisations there are doing great work in Eastbourne. Their work has always been important, but as we recover from the impact of a global pandemic, the voluntary sector will need our support and appreciation more than ever. I also want to mention, though, the amazing work carried out by our council officers, especially during the pandemic. Members of the public might not be aware of the extra hours put in by the new challenges they faced and the extraordinary teamwork that supported our town through the crisis. Our council has had to adapt during one of the most challenging periods our country has ever faced, at a time when many officers were also dealing with the personal impact of the pandemic. The last year has not been easy for any of us. Much of our community has been affected by fear, illness, bereavement and isolation in some way, and the impact of this crisis will be felt for many years to come. So I'm very honoured to be working with our new mayor in supporting all of the people who give their time to our community. During the pandemic, their work has been vital, and as we move forward in our recovery from COVID, we need to ensure that our community, full of heroes, gets the thanks it deserves and the support it needs to continue. I'm honoured to be able to do that in this new role. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6, investiture of mayor's consorts. I would like to announce that Barbara Roddahan, Jan Dobbins Roddahan, and Val Roddahan will act as the mayor's consorts for the municipal year of 2001-2012. Mayor's chaplain notification of appointment. I'd like to announce that the Reverend Dr. Mike Blanche will serve as the Mayor's chaplain for the municipal year of 2001-2012, and I would also like to convey his apologies that he is unable to attend this evening. Item 8, Borough by-elections. Can I call on Councillor Tutt to propose and Councillor Smart to second?
Thank you. Mr Mayor, could I propose that the Council receives the results of the Hampden Park and the Sovereign Ward by-elections and takes this opportunity to welcome Councillor Josh Babarindi and Councillor Sharma Shaw to Eastbourne Borough Council. I hope that you'll both enjoy your time here. It's, I think that it's very much a family atmosphere in Eastbourne Borough Council. We, of course, have political differences from time to time, but that doesn't get in the way of us working together for the good of the town and the residents of Eastbourne. And so I sincerely hope that you enjoy your time on the council. And I know that you'll both contribute to it. I get the opportunity very quickly to congratulate Councillor Babarindi on his maiden speech. I'm certain I'll get the opportunity to congratulate Councillor Shaw in the not too distant future. Can I say to Josh, thank you very much for the speech you just made in support of our Deputy Mayor. It's great to have another Stafford old boy on the council. Although when I went to Stafford, it's where the fire station was, where the fire station is now, and not in the posh new building that I'm sure you and Dean enjoyed. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'm delighted to second the proposal to appoint Josh and Sharma as borough councillors and echo the thoughts that David has in terms of working together. It is a family position, and we will be very pleased to have you on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Tutt and Councillor Smart to make any additional comments, including the thanks to Councillor Ansell, who has stepped down at the last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had the opportunity, of course, to thank Councillor Sabri at our last meeting, but I would like to take the opportunity to congratulate Councillor Ansell on for the work that she did on behalf of Eastbourne Borough Council, her second spell on Eastbourne Borough Council, and the contribution that she made to the lives of the residents of Eastbourne in that role, and particularly the lives of the residents of Sovereign Ward. Sometimes people may feel that because we represent different parties, we're always arguing as politicians. Of course, there are times when we have a difference of opinion. But actually, that is not the reality. On the vast majority of issues, we work very closely together. I enjoyed working with Caroline when she was on the council, and I will continue to work positively with her in her role as Member of Parliament for Eastbourne to try and get the very best deal for our town and for its residents.
Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, colleagues and invited guests. If I might just say a few words before paying a tribute to Caroline Ansell. I want to echo some of the comments that others have made in terms of our great sympathies to those who have had difficulties during COVID. I want to thank the officers who've done sterling work during the COVID period and actually thank them for actually arranging this meeting. It is delightful to be together again. Thank you. I'd also, Mr. Mayor, like to pay tribute to the outgoing mayor. As far as I and the group are concerned, he was a very, very good mayor. And, you know, I do sympathise with his predicament in terms of having a mayorship during a COVID period which limited the activities. But I particularly and fondly remember our 4.5-mile walk from Holywell to Sovereign during this period, where we talked many things, including political. I also, in addition, apart from that, want to welcome you, Mr. Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and of course we'll work very closely with you for the better prospects of Eastbourne. In terms of Caroline Ansell, do I need to say more? First, here's a backhanded compliment to Sharma. I know as a fact that she would not have stood down were she not confident that there would be a very capable person to stand in her stead. Welcome, Sharma. Second, as David has pointed out, she has had 2 terms as a councillor, and this was quite a short one. I don't know how the tribute was paid after the first one, and of course the period has overlapped with her being an MP. So in some ways it's difficult to differentiate sometimes between her work as an MP and her work as a borough councillor. She has of course done a huge amount for the residents of Sovereign, and it is too extensive a list to go through, but I'm sure that the Sovereign residents would wish to thank her for her work. In terms of our work on the council together, again, I wouldn't want to go through an extensive list, but I thought it was quite an interesting issue in terms of working together, perhaps never to be repeated, when Caroline Ansell and Stephen Holt negotiated some words during a Teams council meeting. It was to tribute to both of them, and that was a good example of us working together for the better prospects of Eastbourne. That was in terms of the walk-in centre at the station, and I thought that was a super example. Also, I mean, I think I should probably refer to ongoing discussions in terms of our issues with Brighton and their issues in terms of the way that they have caused us some problems in the way that they operated. And Caroline, yes, in her capacity as an MP rather than as a borough councillor, did make representations in Parliament. And of course, she has been a major voice in Parliament for Eastbourne, and I think has generated quite a lot of funds for Eastbourne. But that is not as a borough councillor, but it clearly works that she's been on the ground. I'm sad to lose her because I think it actually worked, her being an MP and a borough councillor, as the situation on the walk-in centre demonstrated. She will, of course, continue to work for all residents of Eastbourne and a better position. But I thank her very much.
Thank you. Executive arrangements. Can I ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Tutt, to announce any changes in respect to the names of those councillors serving on the Cabinet and the councillor appointed as Deputy Leader of the Council and Deputy Chairman of the Cabinet, and the respective areas of responsibility for each member of the Cabinet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll make this item short in the sense that reference has already been made on several occasions to the impact of the pandemic. One of the impacts of the pandemic, of course, has been upon the workings of the Borough Council and the finances of the Council, as the income tap was very firmly turned off. And as we know, whereas when I became a councillor way back when, the majority of local government expenditure actually came from by way of government grant. That has changed totally. So we don't get a regular revenue grant from government anymore. And one of the ways that we make up for that is through income from some of the activities that we have, including those that take place and hopefully will take place again in the not too distant future in this very building. As a result of that, we have a number of challenges going forward. It wouldn't seem appropriate during a time of change where we're having to restructure and make some challenging decisions in terms of the way that we provide services to change cabinet members or responsibilities. So I'm announcing today that I'm keeping the cabinet as they have been for the past 12 months and the responsibilities the same, and that my deputy will remain Councillor Steve Holt. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank him for the tremendous support that he's given me during this recent period of lockdown and indeed the first period of lockdown. He's really played a major part in ensuring that the council continues to operate in a smooth manner. And I'd like to thank all of the other members of Cabinet for the roles that they've played within their respective areas of responsibility. As I say, this has been a very challenging period, and I'm very grateful to them, as I am to all councillors and officers.
Can you also comment that the terms of reference and constitution of the Cabinet be set out in the Council's constitution, and that the delegations of individual Cabinet members in respect of executive functions have not been made at this time?
No, that's absolutely the case, Mr. Mayor, and the responsibilities are as published. So as Leader of the Council, I would have the responsibility for economic development, local strategic partnership, Councillor Steve Holt for financial services, Councillor Margaret Bannister for tourism and leisure services, Councillor Jonathan Dale, sole responsibility climate change, because that is just such a massive responsibility to actually achieve our objective of carbon neutrality by 2030. And it will need external organisations, voluntary organisations, business organisations to help in that achievement for Eastbourne. Councillor Alan Shuttleworth, Direct Assistance Services, Councillor Colin Swansborough, Place Services and Special Projects, and Councillor Rebecca Whippy, Disabilities and Community Safety. Thank you.
Item 10, appointments, which are on page 15 to 18, Appendix 1, circulated as a supplement. Can I ask Councillor Tutt to move the recommendations as set out in the report and call on Councillor Holt to second?
I believe, Mr. Mayor, that Councillor Smart has kindly agreed to second the list of appointments, for which I thank him. There is one very small amendment to the originally published list, and I apologise, it's my fingers working too fast on a keyboard. Councillor Babarindi is a substitute on the Audit Committee, and Councillor Diplock is a full member of that Audit Committee. But subject to that minor amendment to the originally published list. It's as published in the papers that have been distributed.
Apologies, I believe it's Councillor Smart who will second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I've agreed to second the appointments list. Thank you.
Can I ask if any other member would like to comment? Then can I put these proposals to the vote? Can I ask members to approve?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. That's all approved, is it? 5. We're on to 11 now, aren't we? Yeah. Item 11, calendar of meetings for 2021-22. Can I ask Councillor Tutt to move?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So move the calendar of meetings as published and the amendments that are included in the published papers.
Can I ask, I believe it's, no, do any other, it's Councillor Smart second.
Mr. Mayor, yes, let me just make a few comments before moving on to seconding. In terms of the calendar, you will recall from the minutes of our last full council meeting that I raised the issue of the external assurance review, which was supposed to be completed by the end of May. I understand, although I've only heard through the grapevine, I think that it will not now take place, not now be completed until September. I made the point, this is the key sort of financial consideration for the council at the moment. I suggested perhaps there might be a revised budget after the completion of that, and that there might be an additional full council meeting subsequent to that. At the time, I suggested that that full council meeting could be in September. It may be that given that the time of that assurance review has gone back, it may need to be later than September. But in terms of two issues, the second issue we raised was in terms of the way that meetings work in February, whereby we have a scrutiny committee meeting, a cabinet meeting, and then a full council. And the minutes for the first two are not available by the full council meeting at the end of the month. I believe that has now been agreed that those minutes will be available in time for the full council meeting. But I mean, given that those two things, I am actually very happy to second the calendar, subject to the fact that there may well be an additional council meeting to review the results of the external assurance review, which is so fundamental to the council's finances. Thank you.
Can I ask if any other members wish to comment? Who?
Councillor Murray, straight ahead.
Councillor Morris, sorry.
Murray.
Councillor Murray, sorry.
I do believe the planning meeting next week has been moved from a remote meeting to a live meeting, and that's been moved to the 26th, not the 25th. So just for clarity, just to make sure that, because at the moment it's still written in as 25th at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any other members wish to comment? In which case, can I put the proposal to a vote? Everybody in favour? Unanimous. Item 12, Annual Pay Policy Statement. Can I ask Councillor Tutt to propose?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I propose the annual pay policy statement as printed.
And Councillor Lamb to second.
Yes, I'd like to first of all thank the Assistant Director of Human Resources and Transformation, for the report and urge you to approve the annual pay policy statement.
Thank you. Does any other member wish to comment? In which case, can I put the proposal to the vote? Unanimous. Item 11, special urgency decisions by the Cabinet. Can I ask full council to note the decision made by the leader under special urgency powers on the 26th of March 2021 in accordance with our council's constitution? Pass on, isn't it? Yeah. The date of the next...
Item 14, discussion on minutes of council bodies.
Item 14. Item 14, discussion on minutes of council bodies. There are items raised by councillors under Council Procedure Rule number 14, and the first one is page 40, minute 22, Treasury Management Prudential Indicators to 2001 to 2022, Capital Strategy and Investment Strategy. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to spoil the party, so I will be relatively brief. But of course, effectively, we do have two council meetings rolled into one, and there are some substantive issues that the council has to address. I remind colleagues that certainly last year there was a period when this council had the longest gap between full council meetings. And there are issues of the extent of scrutiny, transparency, democracy around. So in other words, clearly we only have a small number of full council meetings, and therefore, from February to May to July are quite long gaps. And so if I detain you a few minutes, I apologise for that, but I think some points do need to be made. Sometimes minutes do not necessarily, minutes are a difficult thing, and sometimes they don't accurately reflect all of the issues that have been made. In terms of the scrutiny committee of the 8th of February, there were two issues that I've had a continuing dialogue with officers which have not yet been resolved, which are promised to be resolved in July. So I make no apology for actually raising it at this meeting, because the minutes have been published as they were in draft form, with the promise that they may be reconsidered by the Scrutiny Committee at its next meeting in July. So the first one on the Treasury Management and Prudential Indicators. In the last line of that minute, it says, no, let me start. It says that the committee agreed that it was not necessary to request this. I suggested that there was a monitoring and forecasting of cash flow. Now, in fact, there was a vote. I put forward a proposal for a fairly modest position. I think anybody in business will recognise that cash flow is key. I think that the council finances, presumably at the moment, we are moving towards a request for £12.8 million under the capitalisation scheme, and we're one of a few number of councils who have requested that. To take such a loan is effectively a cash flow item. it is not an accounting deficit item. It's borrowing money. I mean, at the moment, I remind colleagues that the council has plans for debts which amount to over 20 times the annual council tax. So it's a serious matter. I put forward to the Scrutiny Committee a proposal to look to some extent at cash flow, which we actually do not do as a council. There was a vote, and I have to say there's a clear dividing line. I'm sorry, the Lib Dem majority on that council voted my proposal down. And I think that is a clear dividing line in terms of financial rigour. So in terms of the issue here, it's raised as the fact that that is not minuted. It's a clearly important issue which was there. There was a vote. It's been rejected, given the makeup of the Scrutiny Committee. And my understanding is that that will be added to the minutes in July. But I'm afraid for the moment, between February and July, the minute apparently stands that the committee agreed that it was not necessary to request this. On the second one, on the Scrutiny Committee, on waste collections, I also requested that there was a public consultation. It was one of the bigger public consultations that this council's actually held. Actually, I think the bigger one might have been on the potential sale of the Downland Farms. But there was a large response to the consultation on waste collection. The actual response was very much that 82% of respondents said that their recycling bins were full on collection, and 50% said that their waste bins were full on collection. I would suggest to you that effectively the response to that is not necessarily to actually decrease the capacity for the collection of waste, which is the way it has been put across. And in that meeting at the Scrutiny Committee, the officer made it quite clear that the driving force in terms of the proposal to go to alternate weekly was financial. Yes, of course, it has some environmental considerations, and environmental considerations must be weighed up against the financial position. I'm slightly surprised that in terms of financial position, the movement to an alternate weekly collection was supposed to move to a £200,000 saving, and yet if you look at budget figures, the costs have gone up by £250,000 a year. So that's a small thing. Clearly, in terms of the environmental considerations, we're actually reducing, I think, by 2 trucks. That's actually reasonably small in terms of the whole carbon position within Eastbourne. And we will look forward to a significant reduction based on recycling. But of course, my point at this here was simply to state that we are in communication in terms of beefing these minutes up to put some of those points across, but they will not be apparently there until July. Thank you.
Would anybody like to respond? Councillor Maxted.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was at the scrutiny meeting, and I certainly witnessed Councillor Smart's proposal for the council to create a cash flow forecast at which the performance could be measured. And this, a lot of argument was put against this from various people. It may have been Lib Dem councillors, but certainly from various people, including myself, that we didn't feel that this was necessary. This was supported by the Chief Finance Officer and Deputy Finance Officer. And a vote was taken, and the proposal was rejected. Unfortunately, Councillor Smart's right, the minutes didn't reflect this, and I actually brought this up at the next meeting and did say that the minutes actually were quite sloppy. They weren't accurate enough. A proposal was made and a vote was taken, and I did ask the officers to make good their minutes, and there was some emails floating around, and then I didn't hear any more about it, so I assumed it had already been done. But obviously it hasn't been done, but I would suggest that Councillor Smart actually approaches the officers concerned, because they've probably gone on to doing something else in the meantime, and just ask them if they would kindly to put that minute right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Down.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of points for clarification, really. There wasn't a reduction in bin size. In the mitigations, residents can apply for a second green bin, so you can increase your recycling capacity at your own home. In terms of the statement that the driving force between alternate weekly was financial, that's totally inaccurate. The driving force to move to alternate weekly was evidence-based of the fact that 73% of authorities around the country do alternate weekly and increase their recycling rates as a result, which is exactly the reason we did it. The second reason was to reduce the carbon footprint of the trucks that go around town, because we're reducing the routes. And the third reason is the financial one, which happened to come timely after COVID, at a time where obviously the savings were very welcome. But the driving force was to increase recycling rates. And the savings, just so you know, I mean, I don't know where you've got the fact that the costs for the waste service have gone up. The savings in year 1 to go to alternate weekly were 202,000, and in year 2 and onwards were 246,000 per year moving forward. So it's just a point of clarification. Thank you.
Councillor Tutt, I see you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm grateful to Councillor Dow for clarifying the issue on the waste. I'm actually grateful to Councillor Smart for acknowledging that on the financial side, this is a cash flow issue. Because in the past, he suggested that this is an issue of debt and that the council is about to go bankrupt or something very similar. What has happened is that the council's invested in assets over a period of time. Those assets have actually paid dividends, many of them large dividends, such as well-being, which we invested, I believe, £750,000 in and £750,000 loan. And Wilden, of course, had the opportunity to come in with us, but found it too risky. We banked £7 million when we sold that, and we took shares in Borough, and those shares in Borough we sold recently for 1.6 million, so that's £8.6 million of income against a £1.5 million investment, and that has helped to deal with the cash flow. So this council is very solvent. It has a lot of money in physical assets, and some of those need to be liquidated in order to take us through the difficult time that we've had, and I referred to it earlier, when the income tap was turned off as a result of the COVID pandemic. But I'm grateful to Councillor Smart for acknowledging that this is actually cash flow and not debt.
Steve Holt.
Good evening, and first of all, like many, Mr. Mayor, congratulations on your new position. I wasn't planning on speaking, which is unusual, but I heard Councillor Smart and I heard Councillor Maxted and others, and the beauty of the current system we've got at the moment is it's all on YouTube. So you can actually watch back and listen to the debate. And whilst Councillor Smart suggests that it was politically motivated for us to refuse the cash flow forecast that he requested, actually it was based as well on what the officers were recommending, which was to say it's actually not necessary and it might not wholly be relevant. And if you don't believe me, it's on YouTube. So thank you very much, everybody.
Go ahead.
Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Not wearing a suit for over a year, I think it's struggling somewhat. Can I first of all, Mr. Mayor, congratulate you on your position, and to Madam Deputy Mayor, congratulate you too, and also like to take this opportunity to thank our past Mayor, Councillor Steve Wallace. Well, what a time to be a mayor that hit you, but actually your vigour and waistcoats as well at various events will be missed. So can I just add my personal congratulations and thanks to you for the past 2 years. I'll be very brief because this is normally the annual council meeting, but as Councillor Smart has already said, there are 2 meetings here rolled into one. where we're talking about the scrutiny meeting. We're talking about two things. We're talking about the Treasury assets, and we're also talking about our waste collection and the decision there to go to fortnightly collections. I said that again, where cabinet meeting, scrutiny meeting minutes don't actually tell the full story. Councillor Dale, you said that actually this is driven by increasing recycling rates, reducing our carbon footprint. As I said at the meeting, I think you guys have missed a massive trick. When we talk about Ashford Council as being one of the councils that was one of the worst, or the worst in the country, with recycling rates at about 13% several years ago, it now sits at 54.2%. But they do food collection as well. So they recycle their food collection. So you have a small carry thing that goes out in the front of your property. And actually, I think you've missed a massive trick here. If you're serious about increasing recycling rates, if you're serious about the environment, then actually we could have done something better and collected food waste at the same time. So I don't go along with that it's just we want to increase recycling rates. I do think some of this was driven by money. And when we go on to the Treasury management part of this, it's amazing. Pre-COVID, this, from what you would hear from some councillors opposite, that pre-COVID, everything in the garden was brilliant. And because of COVID, we're now in this situation. But actually, let's be honest about it. Councillor Tutt touched on the debt position a while ago, but we on this side of the chamber, or of the Welcome Building, should I say, for this evening, have been talking about the increasing debt by Eastbourne Borough Council for several years. When you talk about putting money into assets and a coherent strategy, well, when I think of somewhere like the Hamden Retail Park, for example, I think 6 months after you bought it was worth about £1 million less. I'm not sure that all those decisions are as great as you say. But as we said, and we started on this evening as being welcoming in the Welcome Building, we on this side will continue to work where we can closely for the better of people of Eastbourne. And can I remind all the scrutiny members, and we've got a new deputy chair as well, the past mayor with the waistcoats, Councillor Wallace, that scrutiny is there not just to see what we're doing well as a council, but it's also there, and this is the most important thing, to look at where we could do better. And all scrutiny members need to, take up that mantra going forward for the next year's programme. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Can we continue with the Audit and Governance Committee of the 3rd of March? And I think we can take items 32, 33 and 4 as one. Councillor Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I mean, just a couple of points on the past. I didn't want to make this long. In terms of the comments that Councillor Dow made, just for clarification, the proposal to take two trucks out, I believe, is expected to reduce the cost by £200,000. But where I'm actually comparing the two, the surprise to that is that the costs from last year to this year go up by £250,000. That's where the difference is. And in terms of just responding to Councillor Holt, I'm delighted that this thing is on YouTube and you can fact check what I say. The idea of a scrutiny committee is to actually scrutinise the officers, not necessarily just take their recommendations as read. Thank you. In terms of the Audit and Governance Committee, I'll be slightly light. I simply remind colleagues that we still live in a situation whereby we do not yet have audited accounts for 18-19 or 19-20. And so I'll only ask a fairly general question in terms of where we are, which is on minute 32. I'll stick simply to minute 32, Mr. Mayor. At the bottom of the first paragraph, it says this will be supported with monthly progress monitoring meetings. That was dated 3rd of March. So let me assume that by May the 19th, we should have had 2 of those monthly progress monitoring meetings. Somebody perhaps may be able to answer whether we have. It was resolved further on in item 2 to request that officers liaise with democratic services to agree an appropriate schedule of committee meetings to ensure timely review of external audit reporting from Deloitte. Those are not yet reflected in the calendar of meetings we discussed. I just thought it might be useful to have an update from any of the Cabinet members. Thank you.
Councillor Holt.
I suppose that would be me. Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Smart. I'm very happy to look into the issues that you raised. Two things is that, as I'm afraid to say, it is with Deloitte at the moment, and I know senior officers have met with senior management there and have asked them to continue to escalate and resolve. I spoke to Hamira about that this afternoon, and she will give us an update, but I'm very happy to raise this with you shortly, Councillor Smart. It is a national problem, as we've seen in the press and in any other sort of government audit journals you'd care to read. I've signed up to a fair few recently to find out how the progress is going, and I'm afraid it is one of a national problem. Councillor Smart, whilst I'm here, I wanted to sort of also reassure you in terms of the assurance review that is, as you've identified, so important and something that we are very keen to actively work with whoever the MHCLG appoints. They've actually delayed the announcement of they're now going to procurement as to who that external auditor will be, and that's why it's been delayed. It's nothing to do with us or anything else. It is wholly up to MHCLG, and we are very keen to work with them as soon as they are ready. So I wanted to give you and anybody else that assurance tonight.
Councillor Maxted, do you want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I think Councillor Holt probably covered mine a lot briefer, more succinctly than I could. It's just that I was surprised actually Councillor Smart didn't attend the last audit and governance meeting. It's not quite the same without him, but it was, and I'm not disappointed that he's brought this up again. It is a frustration that I share. I mean, there's no doubt about it. The whole thing since the government handed over procurement to the PSAA in order to save money. This has caused no end of problems, but not only for Eastbourne but for other councils, because of course you're paying someone half the money that you should normally be paying them for an audit, so you don't get priority. And this is exactly the reason why we are where we are today. And Councillor Smart's right. In the meeting we did ask that the finance officers arranged with Deloitte representatives that we have to deal with 3 years' accounts. So we ought to really deal with one at each meeting. Unfortunately, we've missed the May one. I did chase that up, and I'm sure Councillor Holt has already done that as well. But we do have 2 other separate meetings, one in July, one in September, and possibly another one in November. So by the end of the year, then these 3 accounts should be sorted. But it is something that the Redmond Review, as Councillor Smart knows, highlighted that the PSA just was not working as a procurement body. We're stuck with it now. The finance officers have done their utmost to develop a good working relationship with Deloitte, which I'm sure hasn't been easy, but they've stuck with it and they've done a fantastic job. And I'm absolutely certain we'll get this resolved this year. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other speakers? Can I now move to the Council that we accept the minutes?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Next item is the date of the next meeting, and it is scheduled for the 21st of July 2021. We've come to the close of the meeting. The agenda is now complete. I closed the meeting at 7:35. In order to safely disperse the building and maintain social distancing, following my departure, please could I ask members of the press and public to leave the meeting room first, followed by the back row of councillors in front of the public seating. Then the right 2 rows of councillors, then the left 2 rows of councillors, followed by the main stage. Thank you all for your attendance and good night.
All right.